Alright, welcome. So today we have VULCAN here. He has been requested to do an updated build video for Season 3. Now, the last time I did a build video for VULCAN was about a year ago, and since then, honestly, I don't feel like VULCAN's build has changed much since then. His kit is exactly the same, except he has a new passive, which is passive. It doesn't really change up the way you build VULCAN. However, if you have watched some of my previous mage builds, you'll find that his build is pretty much the same as those, considering the previous mage builds were like Zeus and Scylla. They're really bursty mages, and VULCAN is just that. Once you play him once, you'll find out that he's a very, very bursty mage, and therefore his build is pretty much the same. So this will serve more as a refresher from last year's build video on what is still good to build for VULCAN, and maybe you didn't watch my previous mage build video, so let's just go ahead and jump right into it. So starting with conquest, there are quite a few different ways that you can start your build for VULCAN. And starting with the starter items, you can go into either Soulstone or Vamp Shroud. Both starter items will work pretty well on VULCAN. Soulstone, you might do one of these where you place down your turret and allow your turret to do a lot of the minion damage. And you go ahead, throw out some auto attacks, make sure of course they land, and that way you can start building up your Soulstone, and then you can throw out a nice classic meatball or one of those backfires to really reap the benefit from the Soulstone passive. Or in the case if you want more sustain on top of you rather have the plus 100 health compared to the plus 100 mana from Soulstone, then you might favor Vampiric Shroud. However, it's just completely up to you, but for now, we're just going to go ahead and stick with Soulstone. Now, regardless of what starter item you picked up, it's pretty common to go into a tier 1 item right after your starter item. Now, there's a few varieties, I guess you would say, for starter items. For one, you can go into the Lost Artifact, and then from here, you can build it into a Doom Orb if you want a really high risk, high reward item. Once you have all 50 stacks with Doom Orb, it will provide you with a bonus 100 magical power on top of the 40 it already has. So a total of 140 magical power for very low cost. It's really good. Obviously, the high risk is if you die, you lose half of your stacks. Or if you don't want to go into the Doom Orb, you can go into the safer route, or maybe you just want the cooldown reduction instead. Then you can just build your Lost Artifact into the Cronus Pendant. Now, another starter item that you can go into is you can go into the Lifesteal branch, and you can go into the tier 1 item called Tiny Trinket, and then you can build this up into the Bancroft's Talent. Ever since Bancroft's Talent has been reworked, it's a lot better now, and as you can see, it's pretty cheap for the amount of magic power that you get, considering the passive is better, and once you have that lower HP, you get a lot more magical power. So it's not too bad of a really high powered item, and it's seeing a lot more popularity, so you can build your Tiny Trinket right into that for the high power option. Or if you don't want to go into that, there's another option. You can go into either the penetration tree or the physical protection, but the point is you can go into the tier 1 item called Imperial Helmet. As you can see, it costs pretty much the same as the other tier 1 items I previously talked about. The Imperial Helmet, you can build this right into the Dynasty Plate Helmet. As you see, from the tier 1 item up to the Dynasty Plate Helmet, it's very, very cheap. It provides you with not so much magical power, but for what it lacks in magical power, you're getting that plus 15 magical penetration, which does a lot. And as well as, of course, you have the nice benefit of having plus 30 physical protection to maybe ensure you won't be killed as easily from the enemy jungler that's maybe physical, or maybe the enemy mid laner. Mid laner is also a physical guy, like maybe like Neith or Hunter and whatnot. So it's a pretty good item to go into. So if you go into the Dynasty Plate Helmet and go ahead and pick up your boots with your Shoots and Magi, you notice you already have plus 25 flat magical penetration between these two items, and that can provide you with a lot of just burst damage with your abilities. So those are some different starts you can go into, but maybe you're one of those people that like to be a little bit more tankier with your mages, or specifically for VULCAN. There is one last option you can go into. You can go straight into the Golden Sash. As you can see, it costs 1350. You start with what, 1500 gold. So if you can go ahead and buy this, and you have some gold left over for some potions, you can go back and build this into Warlock Sash, and then just go into your boots and the rest of your build. You can do something like that. So those are pretty much the main starts for VULCAN, and which one is up to you. I feel like mages nowadays are pretty flexible in their builds, and it really just boils down to your own personal preference and what are you trying to really achieve, I guess is the word I'm looking for. So let's just go ahead and back all the way back up, and let's go into our Soulstone. We're going to go into Chronos Pendant, because this is what I would personally do, which is go into cooldown reduction. Go into the Pin Boots. Now after, you know, whatever start you go into, the core items that you will have in pretty much all your damaging builds is both Penetration and Raw Tahuti, and maybe some other high burst items. But let's say you didn't go into any stack of items and you did something like I did. What would you build after boots? Personally, since it's conquest and you're killing a lot of minions quite often until the end game, I'd probably go ahead and go into a stack and item. Again, whichever one is up to you. Maybe you prefer Bogatov, maybe you prefer Warlock Sash, totally up to you. But for me, I was going to Bogatov. Next, go into Penetration. I would just go into Obsidian Shard. Spear of the Magus, it has been buffed. I believe they added another 10 magical power to it. It's okay, but it's not really good for Vulcan, considering it's one of those ramp up items, meaning you have to get multiple stacks on the single target or multiple targets for it to really be effective. And obviously Vulcan, since his cannon, his 2 does not apply on hit effects, it will not apply the stacks of Spear of the Magus, and you can't really build the stacks up otherwise. I mean, you have 3 damaging abilities with kind of lengthy cooldown, so it's not that reliable. So in that case, I'll just go into Obsidian Shard. However, Spear of Desolation, it's a pretty good item. It's more of a luxury item. So if you have a really nice lead and you're super fed and you have all this gold, then you can go ahead and buy it, or you can buy this item once you finish your entire build, and you can buy this. And you can buy this to kind of replace one of your other magical power items, like let's say Doom Orb, for example, or Bancroft's Talon, and you can buy this in its place. But for now, just go into the Obsidian Shard, and then top it off with the Raw Tahuti. Of course, you still have your starter item to sell whenever you feel like you don't need it anymore, and you can buy it for whatever item that you want. In this case, I'll probably go ahead and buy the Soul Reaver in its place to help kind of boost the burst damage that Vulcan does. And then of course, I'm probably sell the Pen Boots and buy the cooldown reduction boots for the late game, considering late game is all about team fights, and there might be more extended team fights where cooldown reduction is a really big factor. So between a cooldown reduction item like Chronos Pendant and the CDR boots, you have a nice 30% cooldown reduction, and the cap is 40%, so you're almost near a cap with these couple items. So you might do something like this. Again, the build really varies on what you need. So let's go ahead and back it all the way up, and let's do something real quick for, let's say, more casual game mode for arena and whatnot. Pretty much the items are the same for most game modes, it's just a matter of when you build it. So for arena and casual game modes, majority of the time you're not building into a starter item, you're not messing around with tier 1 items and such, so you can just go into your boots of your choice. So let's just go into Shoes of Magi, go into Chronos Pendant, or any other type of cooldown reduction. I would highly recommend getting cooldown reduction for game modes like Arena, because you're constantly fighting. So in that case, I'm just going to go to Chronos Pendant, then go into my stack and item, Bogatov, then Pen, go into the Obsidian Shard, and then again, it's just the same items, it's just different order, basically. So it looks something like this. And then you can do the same thing. You can just sell your boots for cooldown boots for the late game or whatever. Or maybe you prefer the penetration, you can just keep the pen boots. So it's pretty much the same items for every game mode, it's just a different variety. Of course, that doesn't mean duel. Duel is a whole different ball game with a lot of different builds. Duel, the 1v1 duel, it's really about counter building, which I don't really cover dual builds in the series. So that's gonna pretty much wrap it up. It's very basic, it's very similar to all the other mage builds that I've done for season 3 as far as like the burst mages. So hopefully it was helpful and provide you with like some ideas on how to build your mage in case if you're not too familiar on items and Smite and whatnot. So I'll see you guys next time. Peace.